Hi, and welcome back to the Cannabis Infused Motherhood YouTube channel. My name's Sabrina, and I am very passionate about cannabis, um, everything considering spirituality and healing, mindset, and using different modalities to do so, cannabis being one of those things. Um, and today I'm here to share with you some adverse effects of cannabis use. So it's important to understand the side effects of cannabis, just to go into it educated or at least aware of things that can happen when you're using cannabis, just so you can be better informed. And if something does come up, you will be prepared and know exactly how to handle that. So I think that is very important to know. Some of the most commonly reported side effects of using cannabis can include some of these things I'm about to list. So, the first one being rapid heartbeat. Um, if you do experience a rapid heartbeat while you're consuming cannabis and you would like to try and calm that down, all you need to do is take deep breaths, deep conscious breaths, so in through the nose and out through the mouth. Sorry, and just keep breathing until you can feel yourself slowly calming down, and it should subside in no more than 15 to 20 minutes. So it's nothing to be concerned about. It's pretty typical actually. So if you just experience that once in a while, all you got to do is breathe through it and you'll be just fine. Another effect cannabis can have is dry mouth. So it's very simple to help that is just to stay hydrated, drink lots of fluids, especially water. It'll just help you, get some moisture going on, and you won't, um, suffer too much from dry mouth. It's not a huge deal. Excuse me. The third thing you might experience when consuming cannabis is you might get dizzy or lightheaded a little bit. So the best thing to do when you're experiencing any lightheadedness or dizziness is to just turn on your favorite episode of Friends or something, familiar just to focus on, just to take your mind off of it. And usually that dizziness or a lightheadedness is worse if your eyes are closed. So as long as your eyes are open and focusing on something, even if you're scrolling on Facebook, just distract yourself and it should subside rather quickly. Another thing that might happen is your eyes might turn super red. That's nothing to be concerned about. It's just something that happens when you smoke. It just puts more blood flow to that area. So, if you're someone who is nervous about someone finding out about your cannabis use, you can always use Visine in order to hide that. But yeah, there's nothing too much to worry about. You can also experience coughing, which is pretty common when you're consuming or smoking cannabis. It doesn't really happen when you're eating it or anything like that, obviously. There's no smoke going into your lungs. So, something that you could do is just take less at a time if you don't want to cough too much. I cough a lot when I smoke. It helps you actually like cough out phlegm and things like that. So, it's actually could be a good thing. But yeah, that can be avoided by just taking less or using it in a concentrate or an edible form instead. So when you're inhaling concentrated forms of cannabis, so like hash, dabs, things like that, if you take too much, it can cause like an extreme coughing fit that could damage your lungs. So it's best just to take it slow, take your time. You don't have to, take giant tokes to get the effect, right? So, if, and like I said, if irritation with smoking is an issue for you, just use oils um, or sorry, edibles. So none of those side effects obviously is immediate cause for alarm. Like you don't need to rush to the hospital because your eyes are red or you're coughing or anything like that. It's perfectly normal. Happens pretty much to all of us who are consuming cannabis. So yeah, for someone who is experiencing them for the first time, it might be a little alarming. It might be scary. Sometimes you can experience a little bit of anxiety. So just know that you will be okay, and no one has ever died from cannabis use, so you'll be fine. There's also some acute psychological effects, and I actually did an article for Mother's Mary, um, actually kind of debunking that myth, saying cannabis causes mental health issues and psychosis and things like that. Like I said, it can cause some anxiety, so if you're um, someone who experiences anxiety often, you might want to steer away from the more cerebral strains, which is considered sativa. You'd probably want to stick with an indica. It's more calming and grounding, so you won't experience the anxiety as much. And it's also dose dependent. So, usually, if you take too much, you might experience anxiety. So, it's important to start slow and know your limits and know how much you can handle at a time that you're comfortable with. Yes, so obviously, monitoring how much you take can really help you find your comfort zone with cannabis, and then you won't have to push beyond that point. And also, if you're stuck and you've already consumed too much, you're experiencing anxiety, CBD, limonene and pinene. So CBD is another cannabinoid, and limonene and pinene are two terpenes. So if you look for strains that contain those three things, that'll help you avoid that anxiety effect. And if you have already consumed too much, you can also take some CBD oil under your tongue, and it should subside rather quickly because CBD kind of counteracts the psychoactive effects of THC, which is what will cause your high and your anxiety. There's also long-term adverse effects that come from cannabis. So there was a brain scan study of heavy cannabis users, and that showed that the density of their cannabinoid receptors had declined considerably. This receptor density was completely restored in all the participants after 28 days of abstinence from cannabis. So basically, what they're saying is the receptors that the THC and CBD attach to have declined, and that's because you're building a tolerance to it as you smoke and smoke and smoke and smoke. So if you want to build up those receptors again, all you got to do is take about a month break, and those receptors will come back. And when you go back to cannabis, you'll experience more of the effects again because your cannabinoid receptors have been given a chance to rebuild themselves. It's called receptor downregulation, which is what is responsible for the development of a tolerance. I also want to include a fun fact. Fewer than 10% of cannabis users will become dependent on cannabis at some point during their use. So cannabis is very easygoing, and it's not really an addictive substance for most people. 10% of people do become dependent on it, but I think it's more dependent on feeling stable and well and good rather than having like extreme physical addiction to cannabis. I believe that it's more of an addiction to feeling right and well because cannabis actually works synergistically with our body, with our endocannabinoid system. Our bodies actually produce our own cannabinoids as well. And usually, a lot of problems that come up is an imbalance in that area. So, cannabis helps bring your body back to homeostasis. So, I think it's more of an addiction to being in homeostasis than it is an addiction to the actual plant itself. There's also one more serious thing that can happen when consuming cannabis, which is called cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. And this can happen to anyone, and it's characterized by vomiting and abdominal pain, which is often relieved by a bath or a shower in some nice warm water. And it goes away if you stop smoking it. So, when I was in high school, I actually experienced an episode where I had consumed cannabis with some friends, and I ended up getting like physically ill from it. So it was pretty scary at the time. And it was uncomfortable, obviously, but it was no worse than having the flu or something like that, and it passed within a day. And I still consume cannabis, and it hasn't really happened since then. I think just at that point in time, I had taken too much. So just start slow and don't like go crazy, like smoking a load of cannabis, because you really don't need that much to experience the benefits from it. As you become a more seasoned smoker, you might need a little bit more to experience those effects. But that is playing with your tolerance and just understanding how much you need specifically to feel good and healthy and to help you with whatever you're using cannabis for. That is all for today. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope that you learned a couple things about cannabis. The adverse effects aren't really anything to be too frightened about. There are things with much worse side effects that people still consume daily. You know, cigarettes are way worse, alcohol, way worse, any other illicit drugs, and even pharmaceutical drugs are often way worse. The list of side effects goes on and on. Um, but overall, cannabis is a pretty safe substance. It's now legal in Canada for recreational use. It's been medically available for a long time. But yeah, if you're in a legal area and you're looking into something new, something a little more natural, I highly suggest cannabis as a good place to start. If you don't want to experience the high effect, there's always CBD. So yeah, there's so many options out there. And anyways, I hope you have a great day, and I will catch you on the next one.